Hello and welcome to New Central Television. I am Dapo Adegboye. The top stories at this hour. Northern senators allege funds allocation in 2024 budget skewed against region. Nigeria's anti-graft agency set to arraign former governor of Anambra State, Willie Obiano, over alleged 4 billion naira fraud. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken praises Côte d'Ivoire as a model of combating extremism during African tour. Details in a moment. We begin the news at this hour in Nigeria, where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has justified his 48-man cabinet, saying merging ministries will lead to non-performance. Now, the president, who urged Nigerians to join hands to fix the country, have a change of mindset towards money. Now, he made this known when he received a delegation of the Christian Association of Nigeria, led by its president, Daniel Oko, at the State House. According to the president, combining too many ministries in order to save money will amount to lack of results. To discuss this live, I am joined by Kenneth Ikenwa, a business and social policy analyst. Thank you so much for your time, Kenneth. Now, is the reason given by the president to have a large cabinet size justified?
Well, once again, every style of leadership comes with what is referred to as its own dominant logic. And so the dominant logic of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, since I've known him as a state governor in Lagos State, is to actually have more people on board to see to many affairs. But we must understand that the times and the context in which we are living economically are not the same with 1999 into 2007. So while he must have a belief structure that we may agree or may not agree with, we have to put that in tandem with the social and economic realities on ground. Having too many ministries or bloated duplication of ministries, offices, and secretariat at this present time is not in the best interest of Nigeria. That is because around the world, the mantra now is to have lean governments for better results, lean administrations for better results. And most importantly, you will find out that one of the key indicators of economic freedom is the size of government or the cost of government. So having a duplication of offices, in my view, is just going to be duplicating the finances needed to maintain personnel in those offices and to duplicate unnecessary or perhaps not too important or less prioritized capital projects that will be gulping more money that could have been directed to other causes for development. So I beg to disagree with the president, but he's also entitled to his own dominant logic on how best to get Nigeria to the promised land.
All right, so I guess that you are with the opinion that we go the way of Argentina, where the president seems to have a problem with too many ministries and decided to merge quite a number of them as a cutting measure. Now, in your own case, so what key ministries do you think should remain, and which ones do you think should be merged or scrapped?
All right, I may take a constitutional protection from answering that question, but let's also revert back to how we got into the present situation we found ourselves. We found ourselves in this situation because the Constitution of the Federal Republic 1999 as amended permits this to happen. There is an allocation in the Constitution that says that at least every state of the Federation, including the FCT, should produce a minister. So technically that gives birth to 37 ministries. But you necessarily do not need to have 37 ministries. You could have ministers that could be junior ministers and also have ministers that could be in charge of the hem of affairs in certain ministries. So if you take a look at it, you'll find out that some offices were actually created for us to cater for what in Nigeria, which is known as, for us to cater for what in Nigeria, which we call stomach infrastructure, and to appease those that have actually contributed to those who have gotten to power. If you ask me, for instance, I do not see the need for us to have a Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management. Now take that singular ministry and take the humanitarian aspect to the Ministry of National Planning or Ministry for Budget, and take the disaster management to the Ministry of Environment. That removes the pressure of having an extra office with extra personnel and having unnecessary appropriation for such an office that will lead to events that you are seeing have been unfolding in the last couple of weeks. So I would not go too far in this discussion to start identifying ministries that should not exist, but I think that it is in the best interest of Nigeria going forward to collapse some of these ministries and to ensure that we have a lean government and we have a lean executive arm of government that will focus on development projects and raising the Human Development Index of Nigeria and getting the 120 million Nigerians living in multi-dimensional poverty out of poverty before the year 2027.
I mean, you did mention one ministry, even though you decided not to delve, deeply into that particular question. But do you think the same should be extended to appointments too, where you have, government official having SA and then SSA and then aides, a retinue of aides, and then even in the ministries, you have minister of a particular, ministry, and then you have minister of state for a particular ministry. So I just want to know, do you think a same should be extended to appointments?
Most definitely. One of the banes of Nigeria's development, especially political evolution, is cronyism. Most times we appoint our cronies into office, not necessarily because they're efficient, but because there has to be some form of consolation and consolidation. I think that we have bloated offices and bloated advisory councils and advisors in government. We shouldn't have more than one economic advisor, but you find that the president or a governor would have a special advisor for social media, a special advisor for print media, and all of this is just to accommodate people and expand the stomach infrastructure. I really think that if we are very serious about getting to where we ought to have been since 1960 or since 1980 or thereabout, we have to reduce these offices and reduce these appointments and ensure that we venture into the realms of social efficiency, promoting what is known as Pareto optimality when it comes to the appointment of persons into executive positions. So it is in the best interest collectively for us to reduce the number of special advisors, reduce the number of ministers, so that we can reduce the number of the cost of governance, and most importantly, for the office of the president, so that he can attain a high degree of vertical coordination. You have some of these offices, you have so many posts of command. The major problem will now become for the president to coordinate all the activities of all these ministers, of all these offices, of all these appointees, and see to it that they are actually efficient. But again, the governor, the president, has a special advisor that is responsible for that, who helps him to coordinate the performance of all ministers. But the bulk of coordination should actually rest on the desk of the president, and that will be best achieved if we have little or lower offices, lower ministries, and lower appointments at the executive level.
Now, how does Nigeria's large cabinet size under the current administration compare to the cabinet size of previous administration, vis-a-vis the fact that we've seen quite a number of ministries, will I use the word tweaked right now? For instance, it's not just the Minister of Finance at this time around, it's Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. We also saw that kind of, adjustment, replicate itself in quite a number of ministries. Would you say that is also in line, in tandem with the current realities, or it's just another political play around?
All right, the evolution of nomenclature as it pertains to creating some of these offices and these ministries and these positions is not really the issue. But I also need to mention that nomenclature does not deliver dividends of democracy and does not deliver the promises made during elections. We have to have that at the back of our minds. Now, when it comes to how large this set of ministers are, if my facts are right, I stand to be corrected. I think this is the largest retinue of ministers that we've ever had in the Fourth Republic at one single time for an incoming president. Well, am I calling for a review? I'm calling for a leaner government. I'm calling for a situation whereby we have just one ministry that is in charge of one major sector of the economy. I do not see a reason, for instance, why we should have a minister of transportation and then have a minister of aviation. Are we saying that aviation is not a form of transportation? Or are we saying that we just want to diversify or divide that so we can have more?
But don't you also feel that, that scenario you gave, don't you feel that if, for instance, aviation is under transportation, that ministry will be overburdened?
No, the ministry will not be overburdened. Transportation is transportation, whether it's by air, whether it's by rail, whether it's by road, whether it's by road. The important thing is to be able to have the right people on ground, the right permanent secretaries, the right executive assistants in office that can help the minister to coordinate the affairs. The impact of this kind of thing, especially on our budget, is that the Ministry of Aviation, for instance, the Ministry of Transportation, for instance, the Ministry of Blue Economy, for instance, will come with separate, large, gargantuan budgets that will have impacts on recurrent expenditure and also capital expenditure. And at the end of the day, there'll be too much money out there. And if we bring that back to economics, what we are going to be playing with is inflation in the economy. So the inflation of these offices has a direct impact on economic inflation, and it doesn't have a direct impact on delivering the dividends of democracy. There has to be a review for us to have lean governments. And when governments are leaner, you can see that the tendency to be focused will be there, and the tendency to take one project at a time, logical incrementalism will be heightened, and it will be smiles for everybody a few years from now.
All right, just before I let you go, how does this impact decision making and also governance in Nigeria, particularly when it comes to performance and also the dividends of democracy?
Well, that's quite a complex question. The major impact it has on decision making is that it leads not to satisfaction, but to satisficing. It's called satisficing in management. And what does that mean? It means that many a times when we have to choose from a pool of decisions, because there are too many irons in the fire, we most likely may end up choosing the least best decision for the biggest problems that we have to deal with. And that's why you see that there is no emergent recovery in certain sectors of the economy, because there's too much to do at one point in time. My advice is to imbibe the principle of logical incrementalism, where we take things one step at a time. That way, it's easy to monitor performance, it's easy to evaluate performance, it's easy to monitor the performance of those who have been put in charge of these offices and evaluate it, and then have a final yearly appraisal to see who should remain there or who should be shifted to somewhere else. That way, we will make better traction and gain momentum in governance.
All right, Kenneth Ikenwa, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, Kenneth Ikenwa is a business and social policy analyst. Well, still on the news at this time, 58 lawmakers under the aegis of the Northern Senators Forum have alleged that projections and provisions of the 28.7 trillion naira of the 2024 budget are unfair to the Northern region. They also allege that some federal agencies have been relocated to Lagos. The senators made this known in a statement signed by their spokesperson, Suleiman Kawu, representing Kano South. The Northern lawmakers say they are committed to addressing the concerns and feelings of their constituents in the North regarding the decisions and policies put forth by the federal government, including seeking legal redress if necessary. Earlier, Dr. Jide Johnson, a public affairs commentator, joined us on the news to discuss this.
By virtue of the system of government that we run, the legislature has the power over the purse. The legislature has the power to determine what will be the annual appropriation bill. They debate it. It was presented, actually the executive prepared it, and it will be presented to the National Assembly, both the reps and House of Rep and the Senate, for them to deliberate on it. And whatever they come up with in terms of whatever is seen as the annual appropriation bill is what is assented to by the president, which becomes the act, or which becomes the budget for the year. So they have all the powers, all the responsibility. What did they do with their oversight function? What did they do with their primary function of ensuring that whatever is presented by the executive tallies with the yearnings and the aspirations of their various constituency? Probably they were busy with loading up the budget with other things without focusing on much more details with respect to the distribution of these resources across the 6 geopolitical zones which you have across the country. So, as far as I'm concerned, it was a failure on their own part, and they should be ashamed of themselves because they have the power. The power of the purse belongs to the legislature.
Nigeria's Anti-Graft Agency says it will on Wednesday arraign the immediate past governor of Anambra State, Willie Obiano, before Justice Iang Ekwo of the Federal High Court, Abuja, over alleged money laundering to the tune of 4 billion naira. The ex-governor will be arraigned on 9-count charges. The development comes over a week after the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ola Olukoyede, vowed to review all abandoned high-profile cases, especially those involving former governors and ministers. EFCC's lead counsel, Sylvanus Tahir, will lead 8 other lawyers in the trial of the former governor. In southwest Nigeria, the Speaker of the Ogun State House of Assembly in Nigeria's northwest, Kunle Oluomo, has been impeached. During Tuesday's plenary session, 18 of the 36 members of the State Assembly voted in favor of Oluomo's impeachment. Oluomo was impeached on charges of embezzlement, haughtiness, and other offenses. The Assembly immediately elected a member, Oludaisi Elemide, as the new Speaker.
We are law-abiding legislators, and that is why you have not seen violence all this while. We have our rules and orders in the House, and it gives us, both the standing order and the Constitution gives us the right to elect our Speaker. The Speaker is not in any way higher than members. He's just a first among equal. And whoever the members says is their Speaker is their Speaker. And that is what was demonstrated this afternoon. We just want to pass it to the whole world that there has been a change in the leadership of this honorable House. And at least 18 out of 26 members have unanimously signed, supported, and picked me to be their new Speaker. I am not their boss. I am only the one that will speak for them to guide their interest, protect their interest. That is what we just have done, or we have just done.
It has no correlation. You can see what we have achieved today. Both members of the ruling party and opposition came together to rescue the state. So the entire members of opposition fully participated in this change of leadership, and we take full responsibility of the whole.
The coalition of civil society organizations has expressed concern over the misuse of activism for personal gain and as a tool of blackmail against essential Nigerian state agencies. The group mentioned this at a press conference on Tuesday in Lagos, saying that recent developments have revealed attempts by self-proclaimed activists to exploit public concerns regarding the NNPC and CBN. Leaders of the group, however, emphasized the importance of maintaining a fair and impartial approach to allegations against public officials, while urging Nigerians to be vigilant and discerning in the face of such actions by career anti-corruption crusaders.
The fact that somebody is serving in public office or is a public servant does not mean we should slander them nor libel them. Whatever facts we want to exhibit, we need to diligently search for it, be sure about it before we throw it to the public. Otherwise, we will not pass integrity tests.
Comrade Adeyoju and others should also do us a favor by also ensuring that what they are carrying about or what they are banding around has not been dealt with by any agency of government or another arm of government. Because we are aware that some of these allegations have been trashed out at the House of Representatives.
Deji Adeyoju should learn from people who are consistent. That's what we call 3 C's in struggle. You consult, you consolidate, and you confront. I am sure they have not even consulted. And when you are consulting, you put up a petition to the necessary agencies that should investigate.
We'll go on a quick break now. When we return, we have more stories. Stay with us. A strategic civic engagement involving artisans, community development committees, amongst others, has been held in Lagos, Nigeria Southwest, aimed at reducing sexual violence in the society. News Central's Bettina Nwedi reports that the awareness program is organized by the State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency. Her report.
There's this particular area in my place, ma. Anything 6 o'clock, you won't be comfortable sending your girl child outside.
According to the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency in Lagos State, Nigeria's commercial capital, a total of 5,624 sexual gender-based violence cases were received in 1 year. Between August 2022 and July 2023, the agency received 5,624 cases via the virtual referral and response service and physical reports. Now, the agency receives an average of 250 clients on a monthly basis.
Mo fẹ́ wá tẹ́lẹ̀, but èyí tí mo wá gbọ́ mi báyìí lónìí, any occasion wọ́n bá invite mi sí, màá máa lọ. Ọgbọ́n tó pọ̀ ó wà ńbẹ̀. In fact, mo kọ́gbọ́n gan nípa bí wọ́n ṣe máa mójútó àwọn ọmọ nínú ilé. In fact, àti bí wọ́n bá lọ school, bí wọ́n ṣe lè máa gbóhùn wọn lóòrèkóòrè. Tí wọ́n bá dé láti school, tí wọ́n bá sọ wọn kan pé ọ̀nkù àwọn ṣe nǹkan báyìí, kéèyàn tètè máa bi wọ́n pé kí ni ọ̀nkù yẹn ṣe fún yín.
Learns a lot about sexual violence, and is a very good program that at least I take some points home.
Community leaders are influential members of every society. Hence the need to educate and sensitize the artisans and CDCs, as abuse mainly occurs within the closed social environment. This includes relatives, friends, and family acquaintances, or even employees in educational, leisure, and sport facilities.
October, November, we attended to 436 cases. So we are confident that with this engagement, leveraging existing structures in the communities, we hope that these participants will go back to their communities, take this message to grassroots, and establish that referral pathway between them and us, so that in the communities, if they see something, they now know they have a duty to say something, and more importantly, they know who to report to.
A lot of people are beginning to resign and say, well, what do we do? What do we do? If I go and report in the police station, they'll just be tossing me left, right, and center. But to let them know that there is hope, to let them know that there's something to do, to let them know that the onus also lies on you to ensure that the environment that you're in is safe and secure for your children, both male and female.
In part of our previous engagements, we've realized that these people see cases on a daily basis. In fact, some of them, they tend to even oversee when these cases happen, and they are just sometimes confused as regards what to do.
It is hoped that more of initiatives like this will be put in place to sensitize members of the public as a tool for preventing domestic violence. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwedi.
Governor Caleb Mutfwang has placed a 24-hour curfew on Mangu local government area of Plateau State. Contained in a press statement signed by Yang, here his director of press, the development followed violent attacks that ensued a few hours ago between Locks and Fulani headers. Now, details from the scene of the incident were still sketchy, but the special advisor to the government on security matters has said security agents are working hard to bring the situation under control. Now, News Central's Chizoba Anonwe quotes General Shipi as urging motorists to avoid affected routes to avoid further security issues. Now, details of this will be brought to you in our subsequent bulletins. Now, the Plateau State House of Assembly has resumed after the recess it embarked on late last year. Today, only 8 of the 24 members of the Assembly were in attendance. 16 lawmakers who are members of the PDP were sacked by the Court of Appeal and replaced by their opponents of the APC. At the Assembly today, there were unusual police presence to avert any breakdown of law and order, after a threat by the former lawmakers from the People's Democratic Party to attend plenary today. Addressing newsmen after the resumed plenary behind closed doors, the Speaker had this to say.
November 22nd, the Plateau State House of Assembly went on recess. Adjournment to resume the recess today being 23rd day of January 2024. And to God be the glory. As you can see, we have all of the recess at duly adjourned, and we are back to resume the legislative duty officially today being 23rd day of January, believing that God Almighty will take control to begin the new year with all seriousness, to give the government of President Tinubu, the executive governor of Plateau State, all the needed legislative support for the Plateau State to prosper. Thank you. We are lawmakers, but I'm in receipt of a court process that is in place. So for now, there's nothing as an assembly we can say, because as law-abiding lawmakers, we allow the institution saddled with responsibility of interpretation of the law to interpret the law. So at due cost, we will feed the public with the next line of action. But for now, we have 8 House of Assembly members who are in place until the determination of the court process. As I'm talking to you, there are 32 members claiming 16 vacancies in the Assembly. And as I said, we as lawmakers, we are not law interpreters. So we allow the institution, that is the judiciary, to do the needful by interpreting the law. And at the right time, we know who are the rightful occupant of the 16 constituencies, and we'll do the rightful thing at the right time as an assembly.
Staying in West Africa, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has praised Côte d'Ivoire's model for maintaining security with a less militarized approach, as well as its stand against last year's coup in Niger. He made this known during his talks with Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara in Abidjan. The American diplomats in Nigeria, where he will meet President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Now, the two West African powers have largely stood by the U.S., despite unease in much of the continent over the Western focus on arming Ukraine, and more recently, U.S. support for Israel in its war with Hamas.
We noted and applauded the very important leadership of the President in other regional issues, particularly the very hard but important work of trying to return Niger to constitutional order. We had a long discussion about that. Of course, we spent a good deal of time talking about regional security challenges. And here, Côte d'Ivoire is an essential partner. Partner for us, partner for other countries in the region that are trying to move forward. We appreciate particularly the leadership shown by Côte d'Ivoire in countering extremism and violence. And I have to applaud the approach that's been taken by Côte d'Ivoire, working with communities, listening to communities, making sure that their security forces understand the needs, the concerns of local communities, and building security together. Côte d'Ivoire is showing the way to do that, and I think that can serve as a very powerful model.
It's been 1 week since the ancient city of Ibadan was rocked by an explosion around the Bodija area, which left at least 5 people dead and more than 70 injured. The blast, which was said to have been caused by explosives in the possession of persons engaging in mining activities, has left many questioning how the explosives were stored in a residential area without the knowledge of authorities, while challenging the government to bring the suspects to book. Now, News Central's Bernard Akede, who was in Ibadan immediately after the blast, has been following the developments in this special report.
Nigerian social media space was a scary place to visit on the night of Tuesday, 16th January 2024. Graphic videos and images showing what looked like an explosion went viral, with people having their suggestions as to what may have happened. The first official statement was a press release by the Oyo State Commissioner for Information and Orientation, stating that the government was in control and that the indigents and residents should remain calm. But the sight was frightening when News Central's crew arrived at the scene. Several buildings were affected by the impact of the blast, which spread over a radius of several kilometers. At this time, the actual cause was still unknown, and as for the casualties, 3 were feared dead, with more than 70 injured. But from what could be seen, there was reason to believe the numbers could be more than what was stated.
We have to implore the government to please carry out, like I've issued a statement this morning, that we should carry out a thorough investigation of the circumstances leading to this kind of thing.
Many onlookers and passers-by had gathered, some sympathizing, others just staring in disbelief. While rescue workers continued to search for possible survivors, security operatives struggled with crowd control. Some of the victims whose buildings were affected had returned to see what was left as they tried to salvage what they could.
But we were in shock when we heard the sound, like an explosion. We were just running for our dear lives. Then later we came and everywhere was just blurry. We could not even see each other. It was very dark, smoky. But this morning, we now later saw the old damages because we could not even sleep at home. We slept outside the estate because I can't even explain. And we lost somebody.
We started with a pole from a building adjacent to our house catching fire. So it sparked like, I think, 3 times. Then we were all shouting. We're like, what are we to do? Are we to run away? Because last week we didn't have lights. So we're like, okay, transformer has spot already. But as we have it, we just heard the sound and the walls after us, the walls behind us went, oh God. It collapsed.
Entourages of top government officials, politicians, security operatives and the governor himself, amongst others, paid a visit to the blast site while investigation was still ongoing. A crater about a meter deep was created where the explosion went off, the entire site looking like a war zone.
All the buildings around here, it looks like it's a construction site where buildings have been destroyed. And then behind you can see just carcass of other buildings around. There's a lot of debris on the floor, so we have to move carefully as well. Here too, there were some buildings here, all gone. These are vehicles that were parked in buildings, careful Tosin, that were parked in the building garages, and you can see the effect of the explosion on those buildings. There's an excavator here that's been working since last night.
By the morning of Thursday, 18th, rescue work continued at the site while more residents came back to see what was left of the place they once called home. Meanwhile, more information concerning the explosion has surfaced from the government's quarters.
Some people must have been storing explosive materials in that house for a period of time, not just this immediate time, because for you to have such a magnitude of the crater that created, it is even possible that maybe they build a bunker, which the landlord may know or may not know, keeping some of those explosives. And it's hot weather now. These things don't like it. We saw some document which indicates that people living in that building, whether legally or illegally, they must have been engaged in business of purchase, using, or selling explosives.
As a way of supporting the victims who were directly involved, the government had asked nearby hotels to accommodate victims and hospitals to attend to the wounded, all bills to be taken care of by the government. A temporary emergency situation site was also set up where victims could account for what they had lost. At the site of the explosion, more victims recounted their experiences and how they were coping.
I was stuck by the entrance of the room, and like the entrance between the room and the living room, that's where I was stuck with the whole thing coming down on us, the roof, the POP, the ceilings and everything. So it came down, it was a very loud noise. So there's no how you can communicate, there's no how you can hear anything. So it happened for like 10 minutes straight, like those things, the rubbles were falling down for like 10 minutes straight. Then it was after the whole noise stopped that I was able to like ask for my kids and all that. My younger daughter had a cut on her head, the other one had a few scratches. So my whole intention was only our house was demolished. So I tried, like, I had to like try to find my car key with the intention of, okay, let's just go in the car, wherever we can drive to tonight, let's just go there. Only for me to get downstairs and the car was gone as well.
After the initial explosion, we had a distress call, and the principal, vice principal, myself, and one or two other staff also responded, and we rushed down here. We were able to evacuate everybody. There were 19 girls, 2 coppers, 1 matron, 1 assistant matron, and 1 security man. So there were 24 people in all. Well, to the glory of God, there is only 1 critical case.
Later that day, a statement from the governor's office had it that the death toll had risen to 5, stating that some victims had succumbed to injuries sustained and later died. However, at the site of the explosion, some ambulances arrived, and in what seemed like a covert operation, what was suspected to be dismembered human parts were put in body bags. At this time, the stench of decomposing flesh made the environment uncomfortable. It also cast serious doubt on the figures stated by the government, as at the time of compiling this report, 1 week after the blast, news from the government had it that over 90% of the victims had been discharged from hospital, while the death toll remained at 5. He added that structural integrity tests were being carried out on about 230 properties around the site of the explosion. For residents of Dejo Oyelesi Street in Bodija, Ibadan and its environs, their lives may never remain the same. As some put it, they have lost all they labored for. All attention is now turned towards the government to see what kind of compensation could be given to the victims, while hoping that the culprits behind this unforgettable, tragic disaster will be brought to book. And if there are any lessons to take away from this incident, it will be for the people to be more vigilant about the activities of those around them. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Bernard Akede.
Really tragic one there. But coming up on the news, UK House of Lords votes against approving Rwanda treaty. We have details of the story and more after the break. In the first vote of its kind, the House of Lords has called for the new UK-Rwanda treaty to be delayed until Kigali improves its asylum procedures. Peers backed a non-binding motion urging the government not to ratify the treaty by 214 votes to 171. The treaty signed in December is central to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's scheme to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda, but is separate to the Rwanda Safety Bill. Foreign Secretary of Lord Cameroon urged his fellow peers to back the bill. And last week, the Prime Minister, during a news conference, urged the House of Lords not to block the will of the people by voting down the bill. Now, next week, we have peers will begin debating the proposed legislation which aims to prevent legal challenges to deporting asylum seekers to Rwanda. And of course, in the world of business, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria has announced its first meeting under Governor Olayemi Cardoso, being the first meeting in over 6 months. Now, News Central's Perpetual Fasumid Peter has more.
The Monetary Policy Committee, created by the CBN Act in 2007, supports the economic policy of the federal government and assists the central bank in attaining price stability. It advises the central bank, government and financial industry, setting interest rates, reviewing policies and ensuring clear communication. However, for 6 months, the committee did not meet, creating what some analysts described as uncertainty and anxiety in the system.
Changing the narrative, especially in the monetary policy side. It has not been good for Nigeria if you've not had your MPC meeting for a very long time. Unfortunately, I don't have so much high expectation, maybe based on their utterances. by the CBN governor, I think it will be same of same.
So I feel that while we were having MPC meeting, the CBN governor, the CBN has been using other monetary policy to actually control the economy.
The CBN has announced its first policy meeting under the current governor, Olayemi Cardoso. The meeting is scheduled to be held between February 26 and 27. The MPC raised the benchmark interest rate at its 292nd meeting in July by 25 basis points to 18.75% from 18.5%. Analysts have expressed differing thoughts on what their expectations are for the February meeting.
I expect the CBN to come up with a clear-cut formula on going forward and how to address the FX issues. I think for me, that's the news that every economics analyst or every businessman wants to hear.
The only change that you will likely want to see on CRR is the fact that to ensure that the debit from banks are uniform. But for NPR, I think that we may likely see rate hike. I won't be surprised for 100 basis points. And my view is premised on the fact that last year, inflation actually increased by about 625 basis points thereabout, and we only hiked rates by 225 basis points.
With the MPC's first meeting under Governor Cardoso set for February 26 to 27, the pent-up anticipation is palpable. Will the MPC raise the benchmark interest rate again? By how much? And what will the ramifications be for inflation, growth, and market performance? Businesses are holding their breath. Investors are poised to react, and the entire economic landscape awaits the committee's pronouncement. In Lagos, for News Central, I am Perpetua Fasome Peter.
Zimbabwe's central bank will hold its first rate-setting meeting of the year to address a currency crisis. The Monetary Policy Committee aims to discuss interventions to mitigate the current exchange rate and price instability. According to the committee member, Persistence Wanyanya, the local currency has devalued by around a third against the dollar on the official market and over 40% on the streets of Harare. The decline is attributed to increased dollar demand from civil servants receiving bonuses, the conclusion of tobacco sales, and softening of global commodity prices affecting inflows. Despite efforts to stabilize the currency since its reintroduction in 2019, Zimbabwe has faced ongoing currency volatility, leading to the widespread preference for the US dollar in transactions. Approximately 80% of transactions are conducted in the US dollars, contributing to inflation due to exchange rate fluctuations. PwC's 2024 economic outlook predicts persistent trouble with South Africa's freight rail and ports, leading to ongoing supply chain headaches. This comes on top of international conflicts disrupting global shipping and material flows. Transnet, the state-owned operator, bears the brunt of the blame, as management turmoil, derailment, and equipment shortage plague the entire system. Additionally, PwC calls for reducing reliance on the conflict-impacted supply chains and prioritizing domestic sourcing and production. But challenges don't end there, as erratic energy supply, struggling public institutions, unemployment, crime paint a picture of broader economic hurdles. The public service, as PwC reports, shows a substantial decline in usage between 2019 and 2023, highlighting the strain on state infrastructure as South African businesses must adapt to navigate this turbulent landscape, diversifying supply chains and also embracing domestic solutions, and staying resilient with crucial from weathering the storm in 2024 and beyond. And of course, in the world of sports, Super Eagles manager Jose Preciado believes that despite finishing second in Group A of the ongoing African Cup,
you want to classificate. You are classificate. You want reach the first position in the group. only didn't reach the first position in the group because against Guinea Equatorial you lose 5-6 goals. I don't know. I deserve more against Guinea Equatorial. I think in Guinea Equatorial, congratulations for them because they reached the first position. But in my opinion, our capacity, our job until now, I think you deserve to first position. But okay, you classificate. Today was a match Guinea create less opportunity, didn't score. For this tournament, I put in mind our players. You don't want to suffer goals. You want keep our goal without goals. Or don't suffer goals until final. Was good. Okay, tough match, no easy match. Some pressure and stress. You try to. I think Guinea did a good game also. But you create, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 clear opportunity without shooting sometime. I think you deserve more 1 goal or 2 goals. But I am happy.
And that's a wrap on the news at this time. But before we go, another look at some of our top stories. We told you that Northern senators have alleged that funds allocation in the 2024 budget skewed against their region. We also told you that Nigeria's anti-graft agency said to arraign former governor of Anambra State, Willie Obiano, over alleged 4 billion naira fraud. And finally, we told you that the U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has praised Côte d'Ivoire as a model of combating extremism during an African tour. Don't forget to send in your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. You can also follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422 Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Dapo Adegboye.